March 1st, 2027, including caste enumeration for the first time since 1931. All eyes on the Reserve Bank of India's Governor Sanjay Malhotra to present the outcome of the June Monetary Policy Committee meet tomorrow. Nomura expects another 50 basis points reduction in the repo rate in this calendar year. Ahead of the GST Council Meet expected to be held this month, Finance Ministry holds discussions with industry representatives on rate rationalisation and slab simplification. Moody's rating says India will need massive investment to achieve its 2070 net zero carbon pledge as it balances energy security, affordability as well as energy transition. The National Company Law Appellate Tribunal declines relief to Gensol entities on asset freeze. Also asks BluSmart and Matrix to approach NCLT. But in a relief to Reliance Infrastructure, the National Company Law Appellate Tribunal has stayed insolvency proceedings against the company that were initiated by IDBI Trusteeship Services over an alleged default of 88 crore rupees. A group representing Indian telecom giants Reliance Jio and Bharti Airtel has said their businesses will suffer if India prices satellite spectrum at unjustifiably low rates that benefit satellite internet services such as Elon Musk's Starlink. India's all-party parliamentary delegation led by Shashi Tharoor in the United States pushes ahead with India's anti-terror message. No talks with gun pointed at our head, says Tharoor, ruling out dialogue with Pakistan amid terror threats. And a story for the consumers, a relief for genuine travellers. Indian Railways to now mandate e-Aadhaar authentication for Tatkal ticket booking. And finally, there's some breakthrough. The centre has announced fresh dates for India's long-delayed population census. The Ministry of Home Affairs confirmed on Wednesday that the massive nationwide exercise will begin from March 1st, 2027. And this time, it will also include a caste-based consensus, a long-standing demand by several opposition parties. However, in regions prone to extreme winter conditions such as the Union Territory of Ladakh, Jammu and Kashmir and states like Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, the census will be conducted earlier, starting October 1st, 2026, to ensure smoother data collection. Now, this marks the first official confirmation that caste enumeration will be part of the census process. The decision follows Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnav's April 2025 statement that the Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs had approved the move. Now, meanwhile, the opposition, particularly the Congress, has sharply criticized the nearly 7-year delay in conducting the census. Originally scheduled for April 2020, the exercise was postponed due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the government had planned to roll out the census in 2 phases: house listing from April to September 2020 and population enumeration in early 2021. Remember, the last census held in 2011 recorded India's population at 1.21 billion, nearly 69% in rural areas. Uttar Pradesh had emerged as the most populous state, while Lakshadweep had the smallest population among union territories. All eyes are on the Reserve Bank of India this week as its Monetary Policy Committee, chaired by newly appointed Governor Sanjay Malhotra, began its crucial 3-day meeting on Wednesday. Now, the decision for this bi-monthly policy review will be announced tomorrow amid growing anticipation of a deeper policy shift to support economic growth. Now, in a major forecast ahead of the meeting, global brokerage Nomura has projected a 100 basis points cut in the repo rate for this calendar year. It expects that this will be double the market consensus by as much as 50 basis points instead of 25 basis points. According to Nomura, this would bring the terminal policy rate down to 5%, marking a major move into accommodative territory. Nomura added that further rate cuts in 2026 can't be ruled out if growth continues to underperform. Now remember, the Reserve Bank of India has already delivered 50 basis points of rate cuts in the last two meetings, reducing the repo rate to 6% as inflation eases and remains below the median target of 4%. Nomura expects inflation to further cool to 3.3% in FY26 compared to the RBI's 4% forecast, while GDP growth is also projected to fall short at 6.2% versus the central bank's 6.5% target. Now, with both inflation and growth below trend, analysts suggest that the policy stance could shift from neutral to accommodative, setting the stage for gradual rate cuts of 25 basis points each in June, August, October, as well as December this year. Meanwhile, the Union Finance Ministry has initiated fresh discussions with industry stakeholders to address growing concerns around the Goods and Services Tax, or GST, and explore ways to improve and simplify the indirect tax system. According to sources and media reports, these consultations held over recent weeks come amid ongoing efforts by the GST Council to rationalize the current multiple rate structure, which many argue has added to complexity and compliance burdens. Now, the industry has pushed for a more streamlined system, including a three-rate GST structure and clearer classification of goods and services to reduce legal disputes as well as litigation. Now, shareholders have also flagged the rising complexity of GST compliance and have urged the government to adopt reforms that could both improve compliance and lower the tax burden while ensuring steady revenue mobilization. Now, these discussions coincide with the GST Council's broader review of the tax framework. The Council, chaired by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, had its last meeting in December 2024 and again postponed decisions on rate rationalization pending a final report from the group of ministers led by Bihar Deputy Chief Minister Samrat Chaudhary. Now, with GST set to complete 8 years in the month of July this year, the push for a comprehensive GST 2.0 overhaul is gaining momentum. Officials say the Finance Ministry is actively studying proposals and evaluating potential changes, while also looking at concerns from states worried about possible revenue losses from a narrowed rate structure. Now, although no date has been confirmed yet, the next GST Council meeting is expected to be held either end of June or in early July this year, where the focus will likely be on rate rationalization, compliance reforms, and long-term restructuring of the indirect tax regime. According to a new report from Moody's ratings released yesterday, India will need to invest around 2% of its real GDP every year over the next 10 years to beat its ambitious net zero carbon emissions target by the year 2070. Now, to achieve this, the power sector alone will require massive capital infusion, particularly in the renewable energy space, where an additional 450 gigawatts of clean energy capacity is expected to come online. However, the report also highlights that coal-based power generation will continue to rise by about 70 to 75 gigawatts or 32 to 35% to keep pace with India's fast-growing electricity demand. Now, Moody's noted that India faces the energy trilemma, the complex challenge of balancing energy security, affordability, and environmental transition. Now, as per the United Nations definition, achieving net zero means that carbon emissions are reduced to a level where the remaining emissions can be absorbed naturally or through removal technologies, leaving no net emissions in the atmosphere. Now, India made its net zero pledge at COP26 in the year 2021. And foreign capital, both in debt and equity, will play a crucial role in bridging the country's energy transition funding gap. Now, Moody's estimates that the annual investment needed in the power sector will range between 4.5 lakh crore rupees to about 6.4 lakh crore rupees until FY 2034-35 and increase to around 6 to 9 lakh crore rupees annually over FY 2026 through FY 2051. Now, meanwhile, according to Moody's Indian affiliate ICRA, India's broader infrastructure sector is also undergoing changes. While major investments are being planned in data centers and ports, there has been a noticeable slowdown in new road project awards. Now, the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways has maintained a strong capital outlay of 2.72 lakh crore rupees for FY26, but a growing reliance on private investment through the Build, Operate, Transfer or BOT toll model is delaying project implementation. As India marches towards its 2070 net zero goal, experts say a fine balance of public funding, private participation and policy clarity will be essential to keep both infrastructure growth and the green energy transition on track. And there's been a key development by the National Company Law Appellate Tribunal or NCLT, which has refused to stay an order issued by the lower court, the National Company Law Tribunal or NCLT, that directed the freezing of assets belonging to Gensol Group, its promoters and related entities. The Appellate Tribunal has instead asked two Gensol Group entities, BluSmart Premium Fleet and Matrix Gas and Renewable, to approach the Ahmedabad bench of the NCLT, where the matter is scheduled for hearing on June 12th. And this freeze was ordered by a vacation bench of the NCLT on May 28th, following a petition filed by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Now, in response, the two affected companies moved the NCLAT seeking an urgent stay, arguing that the order was passed without a fair hearing in violation of legal procedure. BluSmart Premium is linked to the electric ride-hailing service BluSmart Mobility, while Matrix Gas and Renewable is involved in natural gas aggregation and green hydrogen infrastructure development. Now, during Wednesday's proceedings, the MCA opposed the plea, maintaining that the NCLT had examined the allegations in detail before ordering the asset freeze. The government has also acknowledged the company's concern about operational hardships like the payment of salaries and expenses due to the freeze and said it was examining that aspect. Now, taking note of all arguments, the Appellate Tribunal disposed of the appeal, instructing the NCLT to treat the applications filed by the two entities as pleas for vacating the freeze order while allowing both sides to present their submissions fully. Remember, the original NCLT order on May 28th had allowed the government to freeze the bank accounts and lockers of Gensol Engineering, its 10 subsidiaries and several individuals as part of the ongoing investigation. So now all eyes are set on June 12th hearing of the NCLT, which could decide the next course of action for Gensol as well as its affiliates and promoters. And staying with what's going on in the IBC court, the NCLT and the higher NCLAT court, there's been a major relief this time for Anil Ambani-led Reliance Infrastructure. The NCLAT has stayed insolvency proceedings against the company that were initiated by IDBI Trusteeship Services over an alleged payment default of 88 crore rupees. Now, the NCLAT bench suspended the earlier order passed by the Mumbai bench of the NCLT on May 30th, which had admitted IDBI's plea to initiate corporate insolvency resolution process against Reliance Infrastructure. Remember, the case traces back to April 2022, when IDBI trusteeship filed a petition claiming that Reliance Infrastructure had defaulted on a 88.68 crore rupee loan linked to 10 invoices raised by Dhusar Solar Power Limited for supplying solar energy. Now, acting at DSPL's security trustee, IDBI sought repayment, which led to the NCLT order last month. And despite attempts by both parties to settle the matter, the NCLT had earlier found IDBI's claim creditable and appointed Tahseen Fatima Khatri as the interim resolution professional. The tribunal also rejected Reliance's plea to halt the insolvency process or stop the IRP from taking charge, citing that the IBC or the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code has no provision to pause the process once CIRP is triggered. However, Reliance Infrastructure later announced that it had fully paid the 92.68 crore rupee to DSPPL under the energy agreement and argued that the NCLT order should not stand since the dues were cleared. And from one Reliance to another, and this time to Reliance Industries Limited and Reliance Jio, as well as Bharti Airtel, now a group representing major Indian telecom companies. Both Jio and Airtel has raised concerns over proposed pricing for satellite spectrum, warning that unjustifiably low rates could hurt their business and favor satellite internet services like those offered by Elon Musk's Starlink in India. India's telecom regulator proposed in the month of May that satellite service providers pay 4% of their annual revenue to the government for spectrum usage. Starlink, however, has lobbied for license assignments without auctions, arguing that spectrum is a natural resource and should be shared fairly. The Cellular Operators Association of India, in a letter to the Telecom Ministry, urged a review of the pricing structure, pointing out that traditional telecom players pay higher auction fees, making their overall payments around 21% more than what satellite providers would pay. A senior government official said to a media outlet that the Telecom Ministry is still reviewing these pricing recommendations, acknowledging industry concerns that have been raised before. Industry sources have also told media reports that companies like Reliance Jio, which have invested nearly $20 billion in 5G spectrum auctions in recent years, worry about paying much more than satellite providers for offering similar wireless broadband services in India. The all-party Indian parliamentary delegation led by Congress leader Shashi Tharoor met with US Congress members, officials, think tanks and policy experts in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday. The leaders discussed the shared values between the US and India, combating terrorism and pushing back against authoritarian states while expanding their economic relationship to build a free and democratic future for the world. During an interaction session at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., Shashi Tharoor made India's stance clear on dialogue with Pakistan. He said there can be no talks when there is a gun pointed at our head, emphasizing India's firm position against Pakistan. Tharoor also dismissed claims from Washington that its trade diplomacy was a key factor in preventing conflict between the two nations. Tharoor further explained the significance behind the name Operation Sindoor. He said Sindoor is a vermilion mark traditionally applied to the forehead of married Hindu women, symbolizing marriage and commitment. Tharoor called the name brilliantly chosen, highlighting its cultural resonance as India's counter-terrorism operation name. Meanwhile, US Congressman and co-chair of India Caucus, Rich McCormick, said that the meeting with India's all-party delegation was outstanding and that they shared great ideas. He said that he's looking forward to the future of the two nations. Speaking to reporters, McCormick further said that India and the US will be allies and friends. Now, the delegation, which includes representatives from multiple parties from India and India's former ambassador to the US, Taranjeet Sandhu, has toured several countries before concluding their visit in the US capital. Indian Railways is gearing up to introduce mandatory e-Aadhaar authentication for booking Tatkal train tickets, a move aimed at curbing ticket scalping and ensuring fair access for genuine passengers. The rollout is expected later this month and will require passengers to digitally verify their identity at the time of booking. Tatkal tickets designated for last-minute travel have often been misused by agents using automated systems. By linking bookings to Aadhaar, the Railways hopes to crack down on fraudulent practices and improve transparency in the ticketing system. Union Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnav said that this will help genuine users get confirmed tickets during need. Currently, Tatkal bookings open a day before the journey, with nearly 20% of all tickets falling under this quota. Time for a short break. On the other side of the break, we will take a stock on how the Lal Street is performing today and what to expect from the big RBI monetary policy meet announcement tomorrow. Amrish Paliga will be joining us right here on News 9. Keep watching.
जो पहले से चल रहा है वही लगाना था।
इनको जमाने से पीछे चलने दो। आप चुनो नया बिरला ओपस पेंट्स।
A deep dive into what matters to you the most. Angles you won't find anywhere else. News that impacts your life.
Welcome back. You are watching Morning Brief at 9. Let's look at the Indian markets as they opened just about 5 minutes ago or so. And it seems to be a flat opening on Sensex and Nifty this morning. Second decimal point hikes is what we are seeing. But then, of course, this is in continuation to the slight upward movement in markets that we saw yesterday. Both the indices, the benchmark indices, were up about 0.3 of a percentage point yesterday. Well, a tepid momentum, but a momentum nonetheless continuing this morning. Thankfully, Sensex has inched up just marginally above the 81,000 levels. Meanwhile, the Nifty 50 is well beyond the 24,600 mark in early trade. Of course, remember, this is just the first 5 or 6 minutes of trade in the morning, and markets could move in either direction. But as of now, nothing really seems to be worrying the mood of investors in the markets. However, no positive triggers also seem to be impacting the movement of the indices. Better news coming in this morning from the mid-cap and the small-cap space. Both the mid-cap 100 and the Nifty small-cap 100 are up in much higher quantities as compared to, in percentage terms, the Sensex and the Nifty. The fear of volatility in the Indian markets, the India VIX, seems to have ebbed really, really low this morning. We are seeing it's down to about 15.68 levels or so. So overall, it seems to be a flattish start to trade this morning. Let's look at the Nifty 50 heat map and see if there is some major movement that we need to take track of this morning. Well, nothing really barring Axis Bank, which seems to be a little bit in the red this morning, down about 0.8 of a percentage point. And we've also got a little bit of red emerging on Nestle. So these seem to be the only aberrations in an overall flat day. Remember, all the grays that you're seeing have movement of just about 0.3, 0.4% or so. The greens are where you're seeing major movement. Eternal, which has recently been added, the Zomato parent company, which has recently been added to the Nifty 50, is showing great resurgence today. The stock is up about 2.21% or so in trade. Beyond that, the mood on the markets seems absolutely flat this morning. We have a very special guest joining us this morning. We have Amrish Baliga. Good morning, Mr. Baliga. Amrish Baliga, of course, is an independent market expert. Mr. Baliga, help us understand. No positive triggers for the market, and thankfully no negative triggers as well. And all we are seeing is a flat trade today. What should investors do in an environment like this?
Good morning, Karthik. In fact, we are in a sort of a range-bound market. And within that range, it's decently volatile because clearly earnings are out of the way. And I think the next big thing is the RBI policy, which is tomorrow. And the expectation is 25 basis points cut, which is already discounted by the markets. In case there's a 50 basis points cut, which would be a surprise, I think then the markets could react. And I think the other thing which is, playing out globally, other than Trump tariffs, which is quite volatile, it is the Russia-Ukraine issue. Post the drone attack, I think the next 24 to 48 hours is quite crucial because the sort of statements which are coming from Russia, I think, can shake the markets. So I think that's something to be watched out for.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would say that the Nifty is in a broad range of about 24,400 to 25,200. Should not really break these two ends for the next couple of weeks, unless, of course, there is some major news which comes out globally.
All right. So major news, of course, like you're saying, the Trump tariffs continue to be volatile territory. And of course, the Russia-Ukraine war and Russia's retaliation on Ukraine is something that markets will watch closely. I think another thing, Mr. Baliga, that markets will continue to watch closely would be oil. And what we are seeing is that oil is continuing to be in the below $65 a barrel level. And that is something which is likely to augur well for India as an economy, as well as energy stocks. So if you look at energy stocks like Reliance, for example, Reliance is about 0.7% up in trade this morning. So how important is this $65 level for oil prices, and how do you feel that tomorrow's MPC is going to take into account the sort of normalization of crude prices before coming up with a growth estimate for the year?
Oil prices between $60 to $65 is, I think, an extremely good equilibrium. I say equilibrium because this is good for the consuming countries as well as the producer countries. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to MPC, I think clearly, the effect of crude is seen on inflation, and inflation has been benign. For a while. Especially below the RBI levels. So I think because of which they would clearly have that 25 bips cut. But like I said, there can be a surprise 50 basis points cut also.
And talk to us also, Amrish, about the consumption stocks, because usually the rate cut is supposed to augur well for consumption stocks, but we see transmission of a rate cut takes much longer than transmission of a rate hike. So how do you see consumption stocks performing from here on?
Consumption stocks, we expect that to perform decently well. One is clearly on the rate cut side, but beyond that, it's the good monsoons. And whenever we have seen good monsoons, especially in the rural areas, we have seen the consumption shooting up much faster. And that's what we expect. And that's, I think, the management commentary which has been coming from most of the FMCG companies. So, we clearly expect after a long time, it's most of the stocks have been down for close to over the last 12 to 15 months because of lower demand. But now, clearly, we expect the demand to start picking up. So I think the next 2 quarters, we should see most of the stocks in the green.
All right. And talk to us specifically about urban consumption and the impact on FMCG stocks, because urban consumption has not kept its pace with rural consumption. And despite low inflation, that continues to be a worry for India's overall consumption story and GDP growth.
I think even that should play out over the next 2 quarters because the effect of the tax cuts, the tax breaks which we got in the budget, I think that should be felt, especially this quarter and the next quarter. So I suppose we should even see the urban consumption slowly picking up.
All right. And what about the auto stocks? Because again, it's a rate-sensitive sector. Automobiles, auto loans, EMIs, all linked to what the RBI does tomorrow. Of course, if it's a 50 basis point bonanza, there's likely to be greater movement. But let's assume it continues to be a 25 basis point cut that everybody has factored in. How do auto stocks likely react to that news?
Any cut in rates is positive for the auto space because clearly the demand moves up because the financing becomes cheaper. But at the same time, we also need to keep in mind the other development which is happening is regarding the rare earths and the China's hold on that and sort of ban which they have announced, and because of which there could be trouble for the auto companies going ahead. A few of them have even said that, especially the EV manufacturers have said that possibly there could be a shutdown post-July. If this is not sorted out. So I think this is something which we need to keep in mind. If this gets sorted out, then yes, I think it's overall positive for the auto space because the demand surely should move up.
All right, demand should go up. I'm also looking at Eternal, the parent company of Zomato, and that stock seems to be up almost 3% or so in trade. Anything that we are missing? What's really going on with Zomato?
No, clearly, the way the demand has been moving up in that space and the way they've been performing, I think this stock is clearly in an upward trajectory. I'll not be surprised if we see, if I see that stock crossing 300 quite soon.
All right, crossing 300 soon. Okay, that's a big news coming in. I also want to spend a minute talking to you, Amrish, about Adani Ports. Of course, we have seen Adani's denial that there was no LPG gas import from Iran and has denied the baseless allegations, as it calls, against the report published by the Wall Street Journal. And we had seen earlier this week that stock had taken a little bit of a beating, but again, Adani Ports is up almost 1% or so in trade this morning. Now, given all that is going to happen with Trump tariffs or not going to happen with Trump tariffs once the July 9th deadline sort of expires, what happens to shipping, logistics, ports and companies like Adani Ports?
No, clearly, I expect a decent amount of watering down by Trump because, with the sort of tariffs they're talking about, more than hurting the rest of the world, it's going to hurt the American population. So I think there would be a practical sort of a solution to that, which should be acceptable to everyone. In fact, if we are talking of slightly medium term, I'm not really too bothered about the Trump tariffs, although it will add to volatility, at least in the near future. And when we talk of the controversies, concerning the Adani Group, we have seen in the past that whenever there has been controversies, it has affected the stock of the group. But finally, they have found a solution to it and things have cooled off. And especially when we talk of Adani Ports in specific, this like the way they have control over the ports in India. And in fact, they control close to about 27% of the total volumes of the Indian ports. So if you are bullish on Indian economy, I don't think you can go wrong on Adani Ports.
All right. Cannot rule out Adani Ports if you're bullish on the Indian economy. Mr. Baliga, one final question to you, and this one is coming from now the fact that the steel and aluminium tariffs are there. We haven't really seen much of an impact on India's own steel makers. So Tata Steel, for example, which has more interest in UK and UK manufacturing plants, has been left out of the Trump tariffs because it happens to operate out of UK. Hindalco, on the other hand, has factories in the US, so again has been spared. But even a stock like JSW Steel, for example, we haven't really seen the kind of beating that one was expecting on India Steel stocks. What's going on? Are we really going to get impacted with these 50% tariffs?
No, but see, looking at the sort of volumes which get exported there, I don't think it's really going to matter too much to the Indian steel manufacturers, including JSW. So I think it was only a sentimental impact the day it was announced. And post that, once the people realize that the effect is not going to be too much, it's actually come off.
All right. Well, Mr. Baliga, thank you so much for sharing all these details and inputs with us. Pleasure having you on News 9 as always. And before we slip into another short break, let's look at the global stories that we're tracking for you today. US President Donald Trump signed sweeping travel ban affecting 12 countries, including Afghanistan, Haiti and Iran, citing national security threat. The order notably excludes Pakistan. Donald Trump calls Chinese President Xi Jinping tough and extremely hard to make a deal with. His remarks raised doubts over fragile US-China trade truce. And Trump's 50% tariff on imported steel and aluminium takes effect as trade war with key partners intensified. European Union trade chief slams US tariffs on steel and aluminium, warns move undermines Trump's Atlantic negotiations. American discount giant Dollar Tree forecasts 50% profit drop, blames Trump's tariff policies and Family Dollar sale uncertainty. Russian President Vladimir Putin warns Donald Trump of retaliation after Ukraine drone strikes and deadly bridge bombing blamed on Kyiv. Ukraine's President Zelensky proposes ceasefire and calls for direct talks with Russian President Putin amid cross-border attacks. Bulgaria has been cleared to join Eurozone in 2026, becomes 21st country to adopt single currency, the euro. Newly elected South Korean President Lee pledges economic recovery and end to military-era politics in his national address. You are watching One Brief at 9.
fertility rates in South India have dropped more sharply.
In the future, you can see it going further down.
Population aging is definitely a cause of concern.
This is an alarming situation. Horror of horrors, the Pollachi horror. Anna University case is despicable.
Of course, there is a political angle everywhere involved.
Can they ever erase the trauma of these Tamil women?
They give a lot of psychological counseling and support to the victims.
Can we still make up?
Light, camera, and action. Kick back, relax, grab your favorite snack because News 9 is here with your weekend dose of entertainment. It's time to take a deeper dive into the buzzworthy happenings of the entertainment world. From celebrity gossips to exclusive conversations, from nostalgic moments to News 9's pick of the week. Don't worry, we've got you covered here. And I hope you've grabbed your popcorn by now because News 9's page 3 is here to serve you everything that we call entertainment. So do stay tuned every Saturday and Sunday, 2:30 p.m.
Welcome back. You're watching News 9. In a sweeping new policy move, US President Donald Trump has signed a proclamation enforcing a full travel ban on citizens from 12 nations deemed high risk to the United States' national security and public safety. The White House stated that these countries, including Afghanistan, Iran, Libya, and Yemen, were found deficient in identity management and information sharing, posing a significant threat. In addition, 7 more nations, including Cuba, Venezuela, and Laos, face partial restrictions. The proclamation marks one of the administration's strongest assertions of its immigration policy. Notably, Pakistan has been excluded from the list despite previous speculation about its inclusion. Listen in to what President Donald Trump said.
The recent terror attack in Boulder, Colorado, has underscored the extreme dangers posed to our country by the entry of foreign nationals who are not properly vetted, as well as those who come here as temporary visitors and overstay their visas. We don't want them. In the 21st century, we've seen one terror attack after another carried out by foreign visa overstayers from dangerous places all over the world. And thanks to Biden's open door policies, today there are millions and millions of these illegals who should not be in our country. In my first term, my powerful travel restrictions were one of our most successful policies, and they were a key part of preventing major foreign terror attacks on American soil. We will not let what happened in Europe happen to America. That's why on my first day back in office, I directed the Secretary of State to perform a security review of high-risk regions and make recommendations for where restrictions should be imposed.
US President Donald Trump has also turned up the heat on US-China relations in a late-night social media post, calling Chinese President Xi Jinping very tough to make a deal with. The comments casting doubt on the fragile economic truce between the economic superpowers comes as no concrete plans have yet been confirmed for the much-anticipated leader-level call expected by the White House later this week. While market response remained cautious to Trump's remarks on his Chinese counterpart, concerns simmered over disputes including Beijing's export controls on rare earth and US tariffs. Both sides have traded blame for the stalled negotiations. The US tariff rate on most imported steel and aluminium doubled on Wednesday as President Donald Trump signed an executive order a day earlier. The administration is demanding best offers from US trading partners to avoid further punitive measures expected to roll out in the month of July. The move has drawn concern across global markets and among US allies already scrambling to manage the impact.
Higher US tariffs on imported steel and aluminium kicked in on Wednesday. Late the day before, Donald Trump signed a proclamation that put into effect his surprise announcement from last week, when he said he would double the levies from 25% to 50%. White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett said the move came after analysis showed the steel industry needed more help. The increase will apply to all trading partners except the UK, which is the only country to have struck a trade deal with the US. Its rate will stay at 25%, but the country is not a major exporter of metals to the US. Canada looks set to be hit hard by the new increase, however, as it's the top supplier of steel to America. And Mexico, another major exporter, said it would seek an exemption.
Economy
Secretary Marcelo Ebrard said the tariffs were unfair, as the US has a trade surplus in steel with Mexico. Wednesday was also the deadline set by Washington for nations to submit their best offers on trade. That's if they want to avoid Trump's hefty Liberation Day tariffs taking effect in 5 weeks. Those duties were imposed, then paused for 90 days to allow time for talks. The White House says it has sent a letter to trading partners reminding them of the deadline. It asks countries to list their best offers in various sectors and says they will get an indication of the likely response within days. At issue for most nations is whether they retain the baseline 10% rate set for most shipments to the US or face a sharp increase. Japan said it had not received any letter regarding the offer deadline.
All right, staying with steel and aluminium tariffs, the European Union's top trade official, Marko Šefčovič, voiced strong objections to Washington's latest tariff hike on steel and aluminium, calling the move deeply regrettable. After meeting with US Representative Jameson Greer, the EU trade chief warned the decision could derail transatlantic trade talks already hanging in the balance.
Of course, we discussed this with the U.S. Trade Representative, Ambassador Jameson Greer, and I told him that we strongly regret this latest U.S. decision, and I explained to him that it clearly doesn't help the ongoing negotiations, especially as we are making progress. For us, this 50% is indeed a surprise because I can tell you that when the first tariffs been imposed on us, on the steel, aluminium and derivatives, it was very clear for me from my discussions with our counterparts that we are not real U.S. problems if it comes to steel, aluminium and derivatives. We are exporting.
And now one of the first fallouts of Donald Trump's tariffs, and that to the American discount retail store Dollar Tree, has come to surface. The Dollar Tree has raised a red flag over President Trump's trade policy impact. The discount chain slashed its earnings forecast for the second quarter, predicting up to a 50% drop in adjusted profit. The company cited pressure from ongoing tariffs and its pending sale of Family Dollar. Take a look at this report.
Shares of Dollar Tree slid more than 10% Wednesday morning after the discount chain said its second quarter profit could fall by as much as 50% from a year ago. It's the latest retailer to flag cost pressures due to President Donald Trump's roller coaster tariff policies, which have thrown businesses into turmoil and have nervous consumers worldwide bracing for price hikes on everything from groceries to sneakers. Dollar Tree also said it would take an earnings hit this year from its sale of Family Dollar, which management announced back in March. One analyst told Reuters that Dollar Tree, while more profitable than Family Dollar, has fewer consumable items, making it, quote, more exposed to tariff risks, and that more volatility could be ahead for Dollar Tree. Meanwhile, rival Dollar General a day earlier raised its full-year targets thanks to increased demand from middle and higher-income shoppers, sending its shares soaring more than 15% for the stock's best day ever. Skylar Wynand is Chief Investment Officer at Regan Capital.
When you look at it, they both have dollar in their name, but it's a totally different consumer base where Dollar General is more of like a rural Target, and Dollar Tree is a strip mall in Florida where you bring your kids and they get to spend $5 on cheap imported goods.
Dollar General's rosy outlook stood in sharp contrast not only to Dollar Tree's, but also to the chorus of other retailers who have cut their financial targets and sounded caution on consumer spending due to Trump's tariffs.
In a high-stakes phone call, Russian President Vladimir Putin warned US President Donald Trump of a response to Ukraine's recent military strikes, including drone attacks on strategic bombers and a deadly bridge bombing. Moscow has squarely blamed Kiev for the escalation. The communication underscores rising tensions as both sides assess their next steps in a rapidly shifting conflict landscape. Take a look.
Ukraine on Wednesday released new footage of its audacious drone strike on Russian military air bases over the weekend. The footage showed attack drones targeting numerous Russian strategic bombers and other military aircraft in an operation codenamed Spider's Web. Satellite imagery suggested the attacks had caused substantial damage, although the two sides gave conflicting accounts of the extent of the destruction. Reuters reported exclusively, citing two U.S. officials, that the drone attack hit as many as 20 Russian warplanes, destroying around 10 of them. The U.S. officials described the attack as highly significant, with one of them warning that it could drive Moscow to a far more severe negotiating position in peace talks to end the war. On Wednesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin told U.S. President Donald Trump in a telephone conversation that Moscow would have to respond to both the drone attack as well as a deadly bridge bombing that Russia blamed on Kyiv. Ukraine has not commented on the bridge attacks, but has taken responsibility for Sunday's attack on Russian airfields. The Kremlin said Trump told Putin that Washington was not informed in advance of the Ukrainian attacks. Trump, meanwhile, described Wednesday's conversation with Putin as good, but added it was, quote, not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace. Earlier on Wednesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky proposed implementing a ceasefire until such time as a meeting can be arranged with Putin. But Putin questioned the point of peace talks with Ukraine after accusing it of ordering the bombing of bridges, which he called terrorist attacks, and some of his most hawkish remarks on the outlook for peace.
The attack was clearly aimed at civilians. This fact confirms our concerns that the already illegitimate regime in Kyiv that once seized power is degenerating into a terrorist organization, and its sponsors are becoming accomplices of terrorists.
Meanwhile, in Brussels, NATO defense ministers met to discuss continued military and strategic support for Ukraine. Kyiv's defense minister said Ukraine's allies voiced willingness to pay for defense manufacturing by Ukrainian companies in allied countries, but did not specify the potential value of the offer.
All right, and staying with Euro, Bulgaria is on track to become the 21st nation in the Eurozone, with the European Commission formally approving its adoption of the euro currency starting 2026. After years of preparation and economic reforms, the Balkan country is set to align fully with the euro area, gaining influence in the European Central Bank. Listen in.
The Commission has published a convergence report which finds that Bulgaria now meets all the criteria to become the 21st member of the euro area. Today's report is a historic moment for Bulgaria, the euro area and European Union as a whole as well. For Bulgaria, the euro will bring tangible benefits for citizens and businesses, lower transaction costs, protected savings, more investment, increased trade, lower interest rates, and a larger euro area means also more stability and greater international help for the euro. It also underlines the strengths of the euro globally, because we know that euro is more than just a currency. It is a tangible symbol of European unity and the peace and prosperity that our European project continues to deliver right across our continent.
And moving to the UK now, British Finance Minister Rachel Reeves announced that the government has no plans for sweeping tax increases similar to last year's controversial hikes. She also confirmed a reversal on pension-related cuts, expanding winter fuel payments for senior citizens following public backlash.
We made decisions in the budget last year to increase taxes by £40 billion. I have absolutely no intention of repeating a budget on that scale again. That budget was absolutely necessary because the previous government left a £22 billion black hole in the public finances, not some year in the future, but in the fiscal year we're in. They had already spent the reserve set aside for genuine emergencies 3 times over just 3 months into the financial year. So I had to take immediate action, both to put our public finances on a firm footing and also to ensure that our public services that had been committed funding, but that money hadn't been made available, to make sure that they could continue to function. We will be increasing spending on police in the spending review next week, so that's not a decision that or a choice that I would recognise. So I had to make decisions last year to restore sound public finances, and that involved a number of difficult decisions around welfare, taxation, and also public spending, including the decision to means test winter fuel payments, so only the poorest pensioners, those on pension credit, got it. But we have now put our public finances on a firmer footing. The economy is in a better shape, but we have also listened to the concerns that people had about the level of the means test. And so we will be making changes to that. They will be in place so that pensioners are paid this coming winter, and we'll announce the detail of that and the level of that as soon as we possibly can. But people should be in no doubt that the means test will increase and people will get, more people will get winter fuel payment this winter.
And finally, let's shift our focus to Asia. In his inaugural national address, newly elected South Korean President Lee Jae-yong pledged to rebuild the nation from what he described as the ruins of martial law attempts and promised to tackle economic hardships driven by local and global protectionism. Listen in.
South Korea's new Liberal President Lee Jae-myung was sworn in on Wednesday with promises to lift the country out of his predecessor's botched martial law mess and revive its struggling economy.
It is time to restore our democracy, which has been destroyed by armoured vehicles and rifles, our livelihoods and economy, which have collapsed due to indifference and irresponsibility, and our national security and peace, which have been reduced to tools of political strife.
Lee claimed a decisive win in Tuesday's snap election, which saw record voter turnout. Myongji University political science professor Shin Yul said the new president rode a wave of anger voting to victory.
The first source of anger was the shock and outrage over former President Yoon Suk-yeol's illegal and unconstitutional declaration of martial law. The second reason was the public's anger toward the People Power Party for defending Yoon.
Lee faces what could be the most daunting set of challenges for a leader of Asia's fourth largest economy in nearly 3 decades. They range from healing a country deeply scarred by the military rule attempt to tackling unpredictable protectionist moves by the United States, a major trading partner and security ally. Shin said a crucial issue for Lee is to resolve the tariff negotiations with the Donald Trump White House, adding that it's closely tied to defense cost-sharing talks with the US, which also needs to be addressed. Lee got straight to work as president and commander-in-chief, naming 4-time lawmaker Kim Min-suk as his prime minister and unveiling top cabinet ministers. The president vowed to bring about a pragmatic pro-market government and address urgent cost-of-living concerns. The 61-year-old expressed more conciliatory plans for ties with China and North Korea. He said he would reopen dialogue with his northern neighbor and singled out the importance of China as a major trading partner, though he also pledged to continue Yoon's engagement with Japan and called the alliance with the US the backbone of South Korea's global diplomacy.
And with that, it's a wrap on the morning brief this morning, but news continues right here on the other side of the break, so keep watching News 9.
Politics of appeasement.
That is the ground reality.
The violence continued unabated for the next